It's Wednesday, November the 2nd. Lake's level about the same as it was last week. It's a little over 911, which is about 6 feet below normal pool. Water temperature's still about the same. I mean, man, it's still 68 to, getting up to 72 degrees. The weather's been beautiful, but that water temperature just won't cool down. We've got quite an Indian summer going on. And the bite's been extremely tough. We keep saying it, but we need that water temperature to cool down. But a few different things going on. A lot of the shallow bite that I had going, where I talked about last week, where I was fishing in the very back thirds of the creeks, some on a top water, whopper plopper, some on a shallow boat docks with a jig. It seems like with the FLW tournament, guys been practicing. There's a lot of boats out on the water, and there was a couple local tournaments. A lot of that shallower stuff's been getting hit pretty hard, and I think a lot of the reason is just not a whole lot of fish up real shallow right now. So which ones are getting, as a lure coming by their head about every 10 minutes. So I think until that water cools down, a lot of them fish are still out there deep. Some of them are suspended, but they've been real hard to catch. Last few days, I actually tried to do quite a bit of drop shotting, trying to find where some of them better fish were suspended. I found very few suspended, but we did catch quite a few on the bottom or close to the bottom. And they were in different depths, but most of them were pretty deep. We caught most of them from probably 32 feet down to as deep as 50 foot. And most of them were about either on the bottom or just, 4 to 5 feet up off of the bottom. And mainly what we was catching them on was little 4-inch drop shot worms. This is a little chompers, a plum. This is called a Royal Purple that White River Lures makes, and this is a plum that White River Lures makes. But the problem with most of them fish, they were 12 to 13-inch fish, very few keepers. So we got to messing around late one afternoon, and we did get onto a pretty good football jig bite. I kept trying to find fish over the deep trees, in 50 to 100 foot of water, but where the trees top out about 30. And it was kind of the same thing in them treetops. All the fish we caught were primarily Kentuckies, and they were little guys. So I started throwing a football jig and a Carolina rig, setting the boat on main lake points anywhere from about 30 to 40 feet, setting the boat in, depending on how fast the point dropped. What I was trying to do was cast the baits up into about 15 to 18 foot of water and work them back to about 30 foot. And we started catching some real good quality fish. We was catching a mixture of largemouths, Kentuckies, and smallmouths, and a couple different things we was catching them on. Probably the jig that seemed to work the best, it was a 5/8 ounce, and it's called a Magic Craw. It's kind of like a cotton candy, not a cotton candy, it's like a watermelon candy or a green pumpkin candy skirt. And I've been using a couple different trailers. I've been using a Strike King Rage Craw. This is a twin tail that White River Lures makes. But I think like a Zoom Ultra Vibe Speed Craw will work, twin tail chompers, anything that's got pretty good leg action. And the little bit bigger baits seem to work a little bit better. And basically what I'm doing is just throwing it up to about 15, 18 foot of water, working it back to 30 foot, keeping it on the bottom. A lot of times you can idle over these points and you won't hardly mark any fish. A lot of the fish, I think, are sucked so tight to the bottom in them rocks. And you can feel on their bellies and actually see a lot of the crawdad claws sticking out of their gullets, out of their mouth. They're feeding pretty heavy on crawdads. Like I say, their bellies are pretty well chunked up, and you can see the crawdads down in there. And another thing we started throwing, you don't hear us talking about it too much, but ever since the jig and a few other different things became real popular, you don't hear a whole lot of people throwing a Carolina rig. But I was throwing a Carolina rig with a 3/4 ounce weight. And here I've got what you call 2 Carolina rig keepers instead of a swivel. Basically that just holds the weight in place. Weight can still slide up and down the line. And if you do break off, you only have one knot to tie, and that's your hook. But I've been using a variety of different baits. Like a watermelon red baby brush hog will work. The Zoom Magnum finesse worm will work. This is a red bug. You know, if I've got a little bit of stained water, I'll throw the red bug. But if the water's pretty clear, you can throw a lizard, baby brush hog, or even a 7-inch Magnum trick worm. Now, something we will throw too, especially when it's tough like this, you know, mainly in the springtime we throw a lot of centipedes, a lot of little lizards. But when that bite's really tough like it is now, this little 4-inch centipede or a Zoom fish doctor, you know, like a watermelon candy or green pumpkin will also catch some fish. And it seems like it's working better for me on main lake points where I've got, you know, a creek on each side of the, going into a pocket or a creek on each side where I've got a pretty good drop off. The depth they're at, I think when they're a little bit more aggressive, they're up there shallower when they're feeding. I can't get a bite off every point. You know, sometimes I got to just keep point jumping, and I may have to hit, you know, 3 or 4 points, but usually whenever I get one bite, I get 2 to 3 bites. And unlike the drop shot fish where they've been little guys, most of these fish have been keeper fish, and, you know, we've had some good solid fish for, you know, like the way the weights have been in the tournaments. The weights have been extremely low. It's been hard to catch 5 keepers. So anything right now, you know, keeper-sized fish is pretty good the way the fishing is. You know, those guys will catch them this next week in the tournament. There's some of the best fishermen in the country here, and somebody always figures out a way to catch them regardless of how tough it is. So I'm kind of curious to see what kind of weights they catch and how they catch them. So till next week, good luck, good fishing.